I speedran Echoes of Elysium and set the first world record. Hi friends, and welcome back to Echoes of Elysium. Today, I'm going to be the first person to speedrun the game formally and set the very first world record, which the lovely developers behind the game have sponsored me to do. This is a classic any % style speedrun, where the objective is just to beat the game as fast as possible by any means necessary. For this early access patch, that means defeating the big bad boss, Mechanos. Time starts when you gain control of your character and ends after he flops. With the rules established, let's get started. As I said, time starts when I gain control of my character, and my first priority is to pick up every resource on this tiny starting island. Mostly because that unlocks the ability to place the first sail, and getting my airship moving is my top priority. To do that, I also need to pick up a few of the floating resources that spawn around me until I have about 10 lithium and about 7 wood scraps. Then I can head back to my tiny skiff, place down one upside down hull piece, and plop my invention desk underneath that. Opening my desk reveals the option to learn to craft a crafting table. With a crafting table learned, I can then destroy the pieces that I just built, and because destroying pieces in this game gives a full refund of all materials used, I can then use the other build pieces that learning the crafting table unlocked to instead place down 2 normal hull pieces with a ceiling directly on top of them. All workstations in this game need to be covered in order to function, which is why I can't just slap them on the skiff and move on. But with the bench ready, I can make the required materials to make my sails, learn how to craft the sails in the invention desk, actually craft my first sail, and finally get the airship moving. After testing a few different saves, it seems that Mechanos' island will always spawn somewhere in a positive y direction of the original spawn. It can be far to the northeast, it can be far to the northwest, it could just be straight north, or straight west, or straight east. But from my tests, it appears to never spawn in the negative y direction from your starting island, which also happens to be roughly the bottom third of the map. That means it's in my best interest to point my ship at a 45-degree angle or lower away from the central lighthouse to unveil as much of the playable map as possible while still gathering materials. There's no progression requirements to unlock the spawn of the final island, so for right now, this run is pretty heavily up to RNG and where that boss island spawns. Since we don't have a set seed for the run and we don't know where the island will appear, it's a 50-50 as to whether or not going left or right will get me there faster. That being said, there are a few things I can do to help discover that island as quickly as possible and get myself geared up for the final fight. Number 1 is increasing the number of sails I have on my airship. I want a total of 5 sails on my ship because that will bring me up to the maximum speed of 20, which is the hard cap on speed in this current version of the game. You can get up to 18 with just 3 sails, but considering we're likely going to be here for a little while we're trying to find the right island, even just 2 units can add up pretty quickly. For my preferred airship layout, that means I need the 1 sail I placed on top of one of my workstations, as well as 2 sails on each side of the ship. Fortunately, we can acquire the necessary amount of plant fibers via visiting any size of island that we pass by and whacking a few bushes and small saplings, which will grant us their fibers for use in crafting. If you get lucky, you can even get a glitched bush that will instantly respawn after you've hit it, and that bush then becomes an infinite source of plant fibers. You can simply continue to whack it, and you can rack up heaps of plant fiber in no time, thus guaranteeing yourself plenty of cloth and rope to finish your run. I can always respawn back to my ship whenever I please by just falling into the void, so I'm not worried about staying with my ship at all times, and this mechanic is what gives me some free time to collect stuff while still exploring more of the map and gathering the resources that I need. In a lot of ways, the current state of this speedrun is actually quite similar to speedrunning Raft, which is a game that I am particularly good at speedrunning, considering I've held world records in more than 8 separate categories for that game. The general practice is the same, where you can just let your ship do most of the exploration for you, while you focus on actually gathering stuff and getting the other stations and materials to help you for your future encounters. Beyond the invention desk and the crafting table that I made at the very start of the game, the only other crafting station that I care about for this run is the galley. And that's because the galley will allow me to make specialty foods that can both increase my maximum stamina and increase my maximum health. But to make those special dishes, I need ingredients. Whenever I visit an island as my ship continues onwards, I'm looking for 3 things. These wild berry strawberry type things, mandrel roots that look like little garlic bulbs, and goats. I always feel bad for taking out the goats because they are quite cute, but going fast demands their sacrifice, specifically in the form of their meat. That's because my goal is to create 3 advanced dishes as I continue exploring. I want the kebab, which increases my maximum hearts by 2 at the cost of some raw meat, mandrel root, and a wood stick. I want the mandrel stew to increase my maximum stamina by 2 at a cost of 2 roots per stew, and I want the berry juice at the cost of 3 berries per juice. The juice also does technically increase your max stamina, but it's more useful because it restores 2 hearts in quick succession, making it great for sustain during the final boss fight. Ideally, you would have 1 to 2 kebabs, 2 to 4 mandrel stews, and as many berry juices ready to go by boss time as possible. The kebabs and stews we mostly want for their stated benefits, but we also want the juices so that we can spam them during the fight to sustain ourselves so we're less at risk of perishing. Unfortunately, each food item independently takes a while to cook. The juices only take 30 seconds each to craft, but each mandrel stew takes 90, and the kebabs take a whole 2 minutes each to craft. That means that we don't want to prioritize either of the longer crafts unless that's our only option, which was sadly the case for me because I wasn't getting any berries on any of the islands I went past. I visited quite a few islands and did get quite a lot of sailing into this run because the 50-50 I took at the beginning wasn't quite right. Although it may look like I only explored a small strip of the map on the eastern side, there is a trick to seeing beyond what you would expect your map to tell you. For instance, if I look at this seemingly empty space of the map while zoomed in, there doesn't appear to be anything here. But if I zoom all the way out on the map, you can see that there's actually a large arid island there. So zooming my map all the way out actually gives me a faster insight as to whether or not there's going to be anything in that area. Additionally, the final island is always guarded by at least 2 enemy ships, and the radar at the very top of your HUD gives you a several 100-meter warning that those ships exist. If I pass through a strip of the map and I don't see any island scraps while zoomed out, and if I don't see any plutocratic vessels luring in the distance, that means I can pretty safely rule out the final island from being anywhere in that vicinity, and I need to keep uncovering more new areas. This additional sailing time did give me time to craft some things that I would need though, like 2 crude copuses to use for my primary damage, and most of the set of marine armor, which is the lowest armor tier in the game. Even though it's the lowest tier, any amount of survivability will matter. Despite my abundance of plant fibers that I got from the glitched bush, this run wasn't terribly lucky in terms of gathering other resources, which left me short on broken parts, and those are the baseline resource used to craft pretty much anything with metal in it. As such, I couldn't make any spare sets of armor, nor could I make as many copuses as I wanted to have ready to go. Technically, you can beat Mechanos with the durability of just about 1 1/4 copuses, but I knew that there would be issues trying to defeat the boss with just 2 swords. The thing about fighting Mechanos is that there are instances of damage that you simply can't regenerate in time before another attack hits, meaning that you are almost certainly going to die at least once. Every time you die, you drop all of the items you had in a little sack, which you then have to sort through and reorganize and re-equip before your items become useful to you again. My main goal in preparing for the boss fight was to have enough swords so that I could just bring in 1 sword and a little food at a time until we defeated him in a war of attrition, so that I didn't have to deal with sorting out my inventory bag every single time I died. But having limited resources did complicate that plan a little bit, especially when that final island loomed into view just after the 36-minute mark. At the beginning of this run, I briefly mentioned that I could respawn to my airship whenever I wanted, and that's because anytime you fall out of the world or perish, Lethe returns you to your ship, making this your anchor point. Those 2 enemy ships guarding this island would rather that you don't have access to that respawn point, so they try to target and destroy it if you give them the chance. To avoid any unnecessary combat that would be a time loss, I instead parked my airship far above the boss island, keeping it outside of the enemy aggro range, thus guaranteeing I could respawn as many times as I needed to without having to fend off additional enemies. My goal was to drop into the entrance as close to the building as I could, because there was always going to be at least 1 construct waiting for me, and eliminating them without aggroing anyone else meant that I would have mostly unrestricted access to the boss after that first run. There were going to be multiple fights, because again, sometimes Mechanos and his cronies will just screw you over and you'll instantly die. This is where my plan of having a backup sword and some food comes in handy. Mechanos doesn't regenerate health in between your visits. meaning that so long as I keep coming in and whacking him a few times, he will continue to lose health and I can just whittle him down. The bad news is that every time I die, I get an affliction, which worsens my chance of dealing real damage. There's no way around that, so I tried to die the least amount that I could, with limited success. Other strategies for fighting this boss included quickly grabbing my death bag and dropping a sword for myself in the entrance hallway to have available for my next run, which was a strategy that came in handy, and spamming as many raw mandrel roots as I had to hopefully sustain a few more hits than I would otherwise. But eventually, I knew we were gonna make it through this. And after a total of only 4 deaths fighting Mechanos, he finally collapsed after 45 minutes and 9 seconds after I started this world, thus completing this run. I do think sub 40 and maybe even sub 30 is possible with better RNG and a little bit better planning for food resources and armor and swords, but that run will have to wait for another time. If you think you could beat my time, you can check out Echoes of Elysium's early access for yourself because it's now out on Steam, or if you want to watch a more casual playthrough, then you can watch my full Let's Play series that is out as well. Thanks again to Loric Games for sponsoring these videos. I had fun playing the game, and I hope you had fun hanging out. Anyways, I think that's everything for me for now. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you all again soon, but until then, have a great day.